So good evening, everyone. I think we're going to try to get started. And one thing I think I'd encourage us all to kind of try to move as close as we can. You know, this is an intimate performance at this point, and I think the audio is a little better down here. So on behalf of Dean Minow, I want to welcome you all to Harvard Law School. We're really pleased to have you here. My name is David Harris. I'm the Managing Director at the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice here at the law school. And I'm really pleased to be able to introduce this program tonight. And there's several acknowledgments I have to make. First of all, I think I have to acknowledge Maggie Zier, who I think embodies everything about undergraduate education and tenacity, determination, creativity, thoughtfulness, sensitivity, compassion, and is really all that stuff, right? And really brought this entire collaboration together, and we really owe her a round of applause, and I'd ask her to stand up a moment. It is definitely well-deserved. So I'd also like to acknowledge the ART and the Carr Center, and I think tonight's event really exemplifies something that the university seeks and doesn't happen often enough, which is really the kind of cross-school collaboration and ways of working together across program activities. And you'll look in your program and you'll see some of the other individuals who have been really instrumental in making this happen. But I have to give all thanks and praise and a big shout to my colleague, Ernest Owens, who is responsible for all the logistics and, of AV and the stage and the whole business, and really makes things happen for us at the Institute. So finally, by way of introduction, you know, today as we think about dismantling mass incarceration, we think about what's going on in the streets, we think about what's going on here at the law school, we think about what's going on at Harvard. I think lynching itself is, for many of us, one of the most evocative symbols and signs of social control and terrorism. And I think, in fact, it might well be lodged in our collective conscious as embodying those things, social control and terrorism. And I think as we watch these performances tonight, we will be reminded of that fact and how timely it is and how related to our times it is. So I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I encourage you to reflect on it, and you know, the panel following the performances will help you do that. So with no further ado, I want to invoke the words of Julius Lester, who, in a retelling of Brer Rabbit, of the trickster tale Brer Rabbit, had Brer Fox once say to one of his unsuspecting foes, "Don't play with me. I don't play. I quit school because of recess." And with that, we now bring you Plays That Don't Play.
Aftermath, written in 1919 by Mary Burrell. Time, the present. Place, the Thornton cabin in South Carolina. It is late afternoon of a cool day in early spring. A soft afterglow pours in at the little window of the Thornton cabin. The light falls on Millie, a slender brown girl of 16, who stands near the window ironing. She wears a black dress and a big gingham apron. A clothes horse weighted down with freshly ironed garments is nearby. In the rear, there is a door leading out to the road. To the left, another door leads into the other room of the cabin. To the right, there is a great stone hearth blackened by age. A Bible rests on the mantel over the hearth. An old armchair and a small table with a kerosene lamp are near the hearth. In the center of the room sits a well-scrubbed kitchen table and a substantial wooden chair. In front of the hearth, in a low rocking chair drawn close to the smoldering wood fire, sits Mam Sue, busily sewing. The many colors in the old patchwork quilt that she is mending, together with the faded red of the bandana on her head, contrast strangely with her black dress. Mam Sue is very old. Her ebony face is seamed with wrinkles, and in her bleared, watery eyes there is a world-old sorrow. A service flag containing 1 star hangs in a little window of the cabin.
Oh, yes, yonder comes my Lord. He is coming this way with his sword in his hand. Oh, yes, yonder comes.
A burning log falls apart, and Mam Sue suddenly stops singing and gazes intently at the fire. She speaks in deep, mysterious tones to Millie, who has finished her task and has come to the hearth to put up her irons.
See that log there, Millie? The one falling to the side there with the big flame flapping around it? That means big doings around here tonight.
Oh, Ma'am Sue, don't you go prophesying no more. You seen big doings in that fire the night before them white devils come in here and taking Po Dad out in Benton.
No, Millie, I didn't see no big doings that night. I see evil doings, and I told your poor daddy to keep air away from town the next day with his cotton. I just know that was his going to get in a row with them white devils, but he wouldn't listen to his old mammy. The good Lord sent me these warnings in this fire, just like he sent those messages in the fire to Moses. You children better listen to
Oh, Ma'am Sue, you scares me when you talk about all them things in the fire.
You get scared because you don't put your trust in the good Lord. He can take care of you no matter what.
Sometimes I think the good Lord done forgot us po-colored people. God didn't take no care of Po Dad, and he put his trust in him. He used to sit here every night by this here fire at this table and read his Bible and pray. But just look what happened to Dad. That don't look like God was taking care.
Hush your mouth, Millie. I ain't gonna have that sinner talk around here. God don't take no care of you. Ain't you been praying night and morning for God to send your brother back from the war alive and whole? Ain't you get that letter no longer than yesterday saying that the fighting's all done, stopping, and that the blessed Lord's gonna bring your brother back, all them battles live and whole? That don't look like the Lord done met with you?
I reckon you's right, Ma'am Sue. But if anything had happened to John, I was never gonna pray no more.
Oh, yes, yonder comes my Lord. He is coming this way.
Lonnie's so late getting home tonight. I guess I'd better take Miss Hart's wash home myself.
Yes, Lonnie's mighty late. I reckons you better slip along with her.
Millie is about to leave with the basket.
Millie,
Yes, Ma'am Sue.
don't you forget to drop that letter for John in the post office he goes by. Where's the letter?
But Ma'am Sue, please, don't let us...
A knock is heard. Millie opens the door, and Reverend Luke Mosby enters. Mosby is a wiry little old man with a black, kindly face and bright, searching eyes. His woolly hair and beard are snow white. In one hand, he carries a large Bible, and in the other, a stout walking stick.
Good evening, Brother Mosby. Come right in.
Good evening, Lily. Good evening, Ma'am Sue. I just dropped in to see if you all are still trusting in the good Lord.
Lord, Brother Mosby, and I've been trusting the good Lord nigh unto these 80 years. What do you think? I'm going to quit and I'm in the sight of the promised land? Millie, fetch Brother Mosby that chair.
That's right, Ma'am Sue. You just keep on praying and everything's gonna come all right. Don't let me tell you, Lily, but what's all this good news we've been hearing about your brother John? They say he's done won some kind of medal over there in France.
Oh, yes. We got a letter day before yesterday from John telling us all about it. He won the World Cross. He fought off 20 Germans all alone and saved his whole company. And the great French general come and pinned the medal on him himself.
The Lord bless his soul. I know that boy make good.
And he's been to Paris. And finds people stopped him when they seen his medal and shook his hand and smiled at him. And he can go everywhere, and they ain't nobody all the time and looking down on him and sneering at him because he's black. But everywhere they's just grand to him. And he says it's the first time ever in his life he's felt like a real shown-up man.
Well, honey, don't the Holy Book say, the first shall be last and the last shall be first.
That it though. And the holy book ain't never tell no lies.
Folks over in Charleston saying that some soldiers is gonna land today or tomorrow. I reckon they'll all be coming along now, soon that the war's gonna stop.
I just hate the thought of John coming home and hearing about Dad.
What? You means to say you ain't writing about your daddy yet?
That she ain't. Millie must have her way. She loved her brother ought to be told, and that could keep on writing to him just like that Dad was living. Millie always done the writing, and I let her have her way.
You mean to say...
But Brother Mosby, I couldn't write John no bad news whilst he was all the way over there by himself. He had enough to worry about with death of staring him in the face every day.
Yes, Brother Mosby. Millie been carrying on them lies and the letters for the last 6 months. But today, I just says to her, this war done stop now, and John, he gonna be coming home soon. And he ain't gonna come here and find me with no lie on my soul. Sit down and tell him the whole truth. She going out to the post office letter this minute.
No good, never come.
The door is pushed violently open, and Lonnie, a sturdy black boy of 18, rushes in.
Ma'am Sue, Millie, what'd you think? John's come home.
John? Home? Where's he at?
What you saying? John done come home. Oh, bless the Lord. Bless the Lord. Millie did not tell you so was going to happen.
I was sweeping up the stove just before leaving, and the phone rung. It was John. He was at Charleston, just landed. His company's waiting to get the 10 o'clock train for Camp Reed where they's going to be mustered out.
But how's he gonna get away?
Oh, good evening, Brother Mosley. I'm so excited I just didn't see you. Why, his captain didn't give him leave to over here till the train's ready. He ought to be here now because it's almost 2 hours since we was talking.
What for you so long coming home and telling us?
Well, I did start right out, but when I get to Shirley's Corner, I seen a whole lot of them white hoodlums hanging around the corner. I guess I felt like they was waiting to start something, so I dodged them by taking the long way home.
Hold on. He's all this dodging poor white trash.
Well, you seen what Dad got by not dodging them.
I must be stepping along now. I got to stop in to see old man Hawkins. He's mighty sick. I'll drop in on my way back for a word of prayer with Joe.
Lonnie, you better run along with Brother Mosby going to that wash to Miss Hack. And drop in Miss Hawkins' stop and get some soap and starch. And I reckon you better bring me a bottle of liniment. This old pain done come back in my knee. Good evening, Brother Mosby.
Good evening, Ma'am Sue. Good evening, Millie, and God bless you.
Tell John I'll get back before he leaves.
Lonnie and Mosby leave.
Oh, John. Ma'am Sue,
Yes, Millie.
who's going to tell John about Dad?
Don't know. I reckons you better.
Ma'am Sue, don't let us tell him now. He's only got a little hour to spend with us. And it's the first time for so long. John loved Daddy so. Let him be happy just a little longer. We can tell him the truth when he comes back for good. Please, Ma'am Sue.
Honey, child, John gonna be asking for his daddy first thing. There ain't no way.
Oh, yes, tis. We can tell him Dad's gone to town. Anything. Just so he can spend these few little minutes in peace. I'll fix the Bible just like Dad's been in and reading in it. He won't know no better.
Millie takes the Bible from the mantel and, opening it at random, lays it on the table. She draws the old armchair close to the table as her father did every evening when he read his Bible.
I ain't much on acting this live, Millie. Oh, yes, yonder comes my Lord. He is coming this way with his sword in his hand. Millie, better light the lamp. It's getting dark. It's gonna home and sinners down right level to the ground. Oh, yes, yonder comes my Lord.
As Millie is lighting the lamp, whistling is heard in the distance. Millie listens intently, then rushes to the window.
That's him. That's John, Ma'am Sue.
John enters. He wears the uniform of a private in the American Army. The war cross is pinned on his breast. On his sleeve, 3 chevrons tell mutely of wounds suffered in the cause of freedom.
Where's Dad? Where's Mary Sue?
Ma'am Sue hobbles painfully to meet him. John takes her tenderly in his arms.
Here's old Ma'am Sue. Bless your heart, child, bless your heart. To think that the good Lord don't let me live to see this day.
Dear old Ma'am Sue. Gee, but I'm glad to see you and Millie again.
Didn't I say you was coming back here?
Same old Ma'am Sue with her faith and her prayers. Where's Dad?
John glances toward the open Bible.
He's been in from the field, ain't he?
Yes, he's come in, but he had to go out again to Shirley's feed stuff.
Oh, that ain't far. I just got a few minutes, so I better run down and hunt him up. Won't he be surprised?
Oh, no, John. I forgot. He ain't gone to Shirley's. He's gone to town.
To town? I hope he'll get in before I'm leaving. There's no telling how long they'll keep me at Camp Reed. Where's Lonnie?
Lonnie's done gone to Miss Hart's with Wash. He'll be back directly. And is this the medal? Tell us all about it, John.
Oh, nah, sis. It's an awful story. Wait till I get back for good. Let's see what I got in this bag for you.
John places the worn valise on the table and opens it. He takes out a bright-colored dress pattern.
That's for you, Millie. Now, quit wearing them black clothes.
Oh, John, it's just lovely. Look, Ma'am Sue.
John flourishes a bright shawl.
And this is for Ma'am Sue. Ma'am Sue will be so gay.
Whoever believed that your old Ma'am Sue would be living to wearing clothes that her grandchild done brought her from Europe?
Never you mind, Ma'am Sue. One of these days, I'm going to take you and Millie over there so you can breathe free just once before you die.
Oh, it's got to be soon, because this old body most will out. And the good Lord's going to be calling me to pay my debt for long.
John shows some handkerchiefs.
And these are for Lonnie.
John next takes out a tiny box that might contain a bit of jewelry.
And this is for Dad. Something he's been waiting on for years. I ain't going to open it till he comes.
John takes 2 army pistols from his bag.
And these last are for yours truly.
Oh, John, are them yours?
One of them's mine. The other's my lieutenant's. I've been cleaning it for him. And don't touch him, because mine's loaded.
Did they learn you how to shoot them?
Yep, and I can never more pick him off.
John.
Never you worry, little sis. John's never going to use them unless it's right for him to.
John places the pistols on the mantel, on the very spot where the Bible has lain.
My, but it's good to be home. I've been away only 2 years, but it feels like 2 centuries. All that life over there seems like some awful dream.
I know it do. Many's the day your old Ma'am Sue sit in this chair praying for you.
Lots of times, too, in the trenches when I was dog-tired and sick and aching with the cold, I used to say, well, if we're suffering all this for the oppressed like they tell us, then Ma'am Sue and Dad and Millie come in on that and they'll get something good out of it if I don't. And I shut my eyes and forget the cold and the pain and them old guns spitting all death around us. And I remember you folks sitting here by the fire. Ma'am Sue nodding and singing, Dad spelling out his Bible. Let's see what he's been reading. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, and do good to them that hate you. That ain't a dope they've been feeding us soldiers on. Love your enemies? It's been get a good aim at them and let it go.
Honey, I hate to hear you talking like that. It sounds like you done forgot your God.
No, Ma'am Sue, I ain't forgot God, but I quit thinking that prayers can do everything. I've seen a whole lot since I've been away from here. I've seen some men go into battle with a curse on their lips, and I've seen them same men come back with never a scratch. And I've seen other men would read their Bibles before battle and pray to live, left dead on the field. Yes, Ma'am Sue, I've seen a heap, and I've done a tall lot of thinking since I've been away from here. And I believe it's just like this. Beyond a certain point, prayers ain't no good. The Lord does just so much for you, then it's up to you to do the rest for yourself. The Lord done his part when he done giving me the strength and the courage. I got to do the rest for myself.
I don't like that kind of talk. It don't bode no good.
The door opens and Lonnie enters with packages. He slips the bolt across the door.
Hello, Lonnie, old man.
Hello, John G. Buddy, I'm glad to see you.
Boy, you should have been with me. It would have taken some of the scariness out of you and done you a world of good.
Here's the soap and starch, Millie.
Has you brought my liniment?
Yes, it's in the package.
Millie unwraps the package.
No, it ain't, Lonnie.
Mrs. Hawkins gave it to me. Oh, I must have left it at the counter. I'll get it when I go to the train with John.
Millie shows him the handkerchief.
See what John done brought you? And look on the mantle.
Millie points to the pistols.
You better hide them things. No colored man better be seen with them things down here.
That's all right, Lonnie. Never you fear. I'm going to keep them, and I ain't going to hide them either. See them?
John points to the wound chevrons on his arm.
Well, when I got them wounds, I let out all the rabbit blood that was in me. If I can be trusted with a gun in France, I can be trusted with one in South Carolina.
Millie, you better fix some supper for John.
I don't want a thing. I gotta be leaving in a little while. Afraid I'm gonna miss Dad after all.
The knob of the door is turned as though someone is trying to enter. Then there was a loud knock on the door.
That's Dad. That's him. Don't tell him I'm here.
John tips hurriedly into the adjoining room. Lonnie unbolts the door and Mrs. Selena Hawkins enters.
Lonnie forgot the liniment, so I thought I'd better run over with it. Because when Ma'am Sue sent for this stuff, she sure needs it. Brother Mosby's been telling me that John's done come home.
John comes from his hiding place.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, Miss Hawkins. Glad to see you.
Well, land sakes alive, if it ain't John shown up. And ain't he looking grand? Just look at that metal shining on his coat. Put on your cap, boy, and let me see how you look.
Sure.
John puts on his overseas cap and, smiling, stands at attention.
Now, don't he surely look grand? I knows your sister and your grandmammy's proud of you. If only your poor daddy would have lived to see this day.
If only you told Daddy. What does this mean?
Oh, Millie, I thought you told him.
Come, Millie, you been lying to me? Is Dad gone?
Mrs. Hawkins quietly leaves the cabin.
I hated to tell you, you were so far away.
Come, Millie, for God's sake, don't keep me in the suspense. I'm a brave soldier. I can stand it. Did he suffer much? Was he sick long?
He wasn't sick no time. Them white devils come in here and dragged him.
My God, you mean they lynched Dad?
They burnt him down by the big gum tree.
What for, Millie? What for?
He got in a row with old Mr. Withrow about the price of cotton. And he called Dad a liar and struck him. And Dad, he up and struck him back.
And then they try him? Didn't they give him a chance? What'd the sheriff do? And the governor?
They didn't do nothing.
Oh, God. So they come into our house, have they? And what was you doing when the white devils came in here and got Dad?
There were so many of them. Come and get him. What could I do?
Dude, you could have fought him like a man.
Don't be too hard on him, John. We ain't got no guns around here.
And he should have burnt the damn candles over their heads. Who was leading them?
Old man Withrow and the Shirley boys, they started it all.
I've been helping the white man get his freedom. I reckon I better try and get my own.
What you gonna do?
I'm sick of these white folks' doings. We're fine and trustworthy fellow citizens when they're handing us out guns and liberty bonds and chucking us off to die, but we ain't a damn thing when it comes to handing us the rights we done fought and bled for. I'm sick of this sort of life, and I'm gonna put an end to it.
Millie rushes to the mantel and covers the revolvers with her hands.
Oh, no, John. Ma'am Sue, John's going to kill himself.
Oh, my honey, don't you go do nothing to bring sin on your soul. Pray to the good Lord to take all this fiery feeling out of your heart. Wait till Brother Mosby come back. He's going to pray.
This ain't no time for preachers or prayers. You mean to tell me I must let them white devils send me miles away to die and suffer and be shot up for the freedom of people I ain't never seen, while they burning and killing my folks here at home? To hell with them.
He pushes Millie aside and, seizing the revolvers, thrusts the loaded one into his pocket and begins deliberately to load the other.
Oh, John, they'll kill you.
To hell, what did they do? I ain't scared of none of them. I face worse guns than any sneaking hounds can show me. To hell with them.
John thrusts the revolver that he has just loaded into Lonnie's hand.
Take this and come on here, boy, and we'll see what Withrow and his gang got to say.
Followed by Lonnie, who is bewildered and speechless, John rushes out of the cabin and disappears in the gathering darkness. Curtain.
A Sunday Morning in the South, written in 1925 by Georgia Douglas Johnson. Place, a town in the South. Time, 1924. Scene, the kitchen in Sue Jones' two-room house. A window on left, a door leading to backyard, and another leading to the front room. A stove against the back wall, a table near it, 4 chairs. An old-time pie safe with dishes and 2 bottles, one clear and one dark. A wooden water bucket with whiny brass pails and a tin dipper hanging near it on a nail. As the curtain rises, Sue Jones is seen putting the breakfast on the kitchen table. She wears a red bandana handkerchief on her gray head, a big blue gingham apron tied around her waist, and big, wide old lady comfort shoes. She uses a stick as she has a sore leg and moves about with a stoop and a limp as she goes back and forth from the stove to the table.
Tom, you and Bossy better come on out here and get your breakfast before it gets cold. I got good hot rolls this morning.
All right, Granny, we're coming.
You better if you know what's good for you.
She opens the stove door, looks at rolls, then begins humming and singing.
You just look at the morning star. You will get home by and by.
As she finishes the song, Tom and Bossy come hurrying into the kitchen. Sue takes rolls out of stove with her apron and brings them to the table.
It's as hard to get y'all out of bed on Sunday morning as it is to pull hen's teeth.
The church bell next door rings.
There's the church bell. Remember I told you last night how I sprained it lifting them heavy boxes for Mr. John?
You hadn't ought to done it. You ought to ask him to let somebody help you. You ain't no horse.
I reckon I ought to have, but I didn't know how heavy they was till I started lifting them, and then he was gone.
You ought to have some of my snake oil liniment on it last night. That's what.
I wish I had it, but I was so dead tired. I got straight out of my clothes and I went straight to bed. I must have been in bed by 9 o'clock, I reckon.
9 o'clock? You was crazy. That's why no more than 8 when I called you to go to the store and get me a yeast cake for my lot rolls, and you was sleeping like a log of wood. I had to send Bossy for it.
Yes, and you snored so loud I thought you would have choked. Granny, can I have some more?
What? Where's all that I just give you?
It's gone down the Red Lane strut.
Well, this is all you're going to get this morning. When you get big and work like Tom, you can stuff all you want to.
I ain't never gonna break my back working like Tom. I'm gonna be a preacher, that's what. And
Sue looks out the window.
I reckon that's Liza Twiggs must be on her way to church and smell these light rolls and coffee.
A knock is heard at the back door.
Let her in, Bossy. Morning, y'all.
Morning, Liza. On your way to church?
Yes, the first bell just rang, and I thought I'd drop in a minute. Coffee sure smells good.
Tastes better and it smells. Pull up a chair and swallow a cupful of one of these light rolls.
Don't care if I do. How's your leg getting on?
Well, as I can't expect. I won't never walk on it no good, though. It eats and eats. Sure is lucky I'm standing right here next door to church. Open that window, Tom, so I can hear the singing. Folks don't like to sit next to me in church no more. Think it's catching cancer or something. What you know, good?
From the church next door is heard the hymn, drifting through the windows. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saves a wretch like me.
Well, they done started Amazing Grace. That music sure is sweet, but I gotta finish eating first, then I'll go.
I asked you what you know good.
Well, I don't know nothing tall good, but I did hear as how the police is all over now trying to run down some poor nigger they said that's attacked a white woman last night, right up here near the Pine Street Market. They said that's how the white folks are sure enough mad, too. And if they catch her, they gotta make short walk of them.
You don't say. I don't hold with no rascality. I believe in meting out punishment to the guilty, but they first ought to find out who done it, though, and then let the law handle it. That's what I say.
Me too. I think the laws ought to handle them, too. But you know, a side of times they gets the wrong man and goes and strings them up and don't find out who done it till it's too late.
That's so. And sometimes the white ones been known to be black in their faces and make you believe some poor nigga has done it.
They lynch about anything, too. Not just women. They say Zed Brooks was strung up just because him and his boss got in an argument.
Sure did. I says the law's the law, and it ought to be her orchestration to protect the weak, and not some little old flimsy shack that a puff of wind can blow down.
I've been thinking a whole lot about these things. And I mean to go to night school and get a little book learning so that I can do something to help change the laws, make them strong. I sometimes get right upset and I wonder, what would I do if they ever tried to put something on me?
Everybody knows you. Nobody would bother you.
Nah, Sonny. You won't never have to worry about such like that, but you can help to save the poor devils they do go after.
Singing comes from the church next door. Shine on me, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, shine on me, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me.
It takes a sight of learning to understand the laws, and I'm gonna...
A quick rap is heard. The door is almost immediately pushed open and an officer enters.
Tom Griggs live here?
Yes, sir?
You Tom Griggs?
Yes, sir.
Where were you last night at 10 o'clock?
Right here, sir. He was right here at home. What you want to know from me?
You keep quiet, old woman. Say, you answer up. Can't you talk? Where were you last night at 10 o'clock?
Grandma told you. I was right here, at home. I was in bed at 8 o'clock.
Sounds fishy to me. In bed at 8 o'clock. And who else knows you were here?
Say, Mr. Officer, what you trying to do to my grandson? Shows God Almighty's up in the heavens. He was right here in bed. I seen him, and his little brother Bossy saw him. Didn't you, Bossy?
Yes, I see them and I hear them.
Shut up. Your word's nothing. Nor yours either. Both of you'd lie for him.
He steps to the back door and makes a sign to someone outside. Then comes back into the room, taking a piece of paper from his vest pocket and reads slowly.
Age around 20. 5 feet 5 or 6. Brown skin. Yep. Fits like a glove.
A second officer pushes open the door and stands there supporting a young white girl on his arm.
Is this the man?
I'm not sure, but it does look something like him.
Take a good look, miss. He fits our description perfect. Color, size, age, everything. Pine Street Market ain't nowhere from here, and he surely did pass that way last night. He was there, all right. All right, we got to figure it out. You say he looks like him?
Yes, I think so, but I...
Then she covers her face with her arm and turns quickly and moves away from the door, supported by second officer. First officer makes a step toward Tom and slips handcuffs on him.
What you doing? What you doing? You can't arrest my grandson. He ain't done nothing wrong.
Be quiet, old woman. I'm just going to take him along to the sheriff to question him, and if he's telling the truth, he'll be right back here in no time.
But you can't arrest him. He don't know no more about that polo white child than I do. You can't arrest him.
Grandma, don't take on so. I'll go along with the sheriff. I'll explain to him how I couldn't have done it. When I was asleep here all the time, I never laid eyes on that white girl before in my life.
Of course you ain't. Mr. Officer, that white child ain't never seen my grandson before. All niggas looks alike to her. She gets so upset she don't know what she's saying.
You just keep cool, Granny. He'll be all right if he's innocent. The quieter you comes along, the better it'll be for you.
Tom looks back at his grandma from the doorway.
I'll be right back, Granny. Don't cry. Don't cry. Just as soon as I see
the officer pulls him out of the doorway.
Sweet Jesus, do come down and help us this morning. You know our hearts, and you know this poor boy ain't done nothing wrong. You said you would help the fatherless and the motherless. Do, Jesus, bring this poor orphan back to his old crippled granny safe and sound. Do, Jesus.
Granny, what are they going to do to my brother? What are they going to do to him?
Good Jesus only knows, but I'm talking to the Lord now, asking him to...
A rap is heard at the door. Matilda Brown enters hurriedly and excitedly.
Miss Liza, as I was coming along, I see Tom with the police, and there was some white man with guns trying to take him away from the police. Said he'd done been identified, and they weren't going to be cheated out of that nigger this time. I flew on down here to tell you, you better do something.
Oh, my God, what can I do? You got to get word to some of your good white folks, that's what, and get him to save him.
Yes, that's what. Let me see. I got it. Miss Violet. I got to get to Miss Violet. I nursed her when she was a baby, and she'll do it. Her pa's a judge.
That's right. I'll go. You can't go quick.
No, let me go. I can move in a hurry. Let me go.
All right, Tildy. Tell Miss Violet her old nurse Sue is calling on her, and don't fail me. Tell her they done took Tom, and he's perfect innocent. They're going to take him away from the police, and ask her to ask her pa, the judge, to get Tom and save him for God's sake. Now hurry, Tilda, fly.
Let me go. I knows how to get there quick, come through the field.
Yes, they knows Bossy. He can help tell.
Yes, Bossy, go on, y'all, hurry.
Matilda and Bossy hurry out of the back door. Liza comes over to Sue.
Now, everything's gonna be all right. Miss Violet will fix it. She ain't gonna let her old man be calling her for nothing. She'll make her pa save you.
Yeah, she's a good child. I know she'll save him.
From the church next door comes the sound of singing. Alas, and did my Savior bleed, and did my sovereign die? Would he devote his sacred head for such a world as I? Must Jesus bear the cross alone, and all the world go free? No, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me.
Oh, Lord, help us to bear our cross. Help us.
Liza, I'm feeling sort of fainted. Like, give me my bottle of camphor out to save y'all.
Yes, child, get it. You done gone through a whole lot this morning, God knows. This it?
That's my sweet all. It's the other one in the black bottle. See?
Yes, here it is. Strong, too. It'll do you good. I have some sinking spells, too, sometimes. There. Draw a deep breath of it. Feel better?
I'll feel better directly. My old heart's getting weak.
Oh, sit back comfortable in your chair and listen to the singing. Oh, they also sure talking to the Lord for you in that church this morning. Listen.
The church is singing. I must tell Jesus all of my trials. I cannot bear my burdens alone. In my distress, he'll surely help me. I cannot bear my burdens alone.
That's all? That's all we can do is tell Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, please bow down your ear.
I reckon Tildy's about on her way back now. I knows Miss Violet done got a paw by now. Don't you reckon, Liza?
Of course. I expect Tom will be coming back any minute now. Everybody knows he ain't do no harm.
Who that coming?
Matilda pushes open the door and comes in. Bossy follows her, crying.
What's the matter? Didn't you find Miss Violet?
It won't no use.
No use?
What do you mean?
I mean,
For God's sake, Tildy, what's happened?
they done lynched him.
Jesus!
Sue gasps and falls limp in her chair. Singing from church begins. Bossy runs to her, crying afresh. Liza puts the camphor bottle to her nose again as Matilda feels her heart. The words of this song pour forth from church. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy over me. It is sung the first time with words, then repeated in a low hum as the curtain slowly falls. End of play.
Nails and Thorns, written in 1933 by May Millett. Time, the 1930s. Place, a small town, probably south, probably west, a small town ruled by frenzy. Scene, the comfortable living room of the sheriff's bungalow. The living room is furnished in the mode of the day with radios, tables, reading lamps, and a three-piece suite of overstuffed furniture. There are 2 windows and 2 doors in the room. The door to the left leads to the rest of the house. The one to the right, covered with a screen door, leads to the outside. It is early twilight on a warm June day, and the windows and doors are open. Gladys, a slender woman in her late 20s, is standing before the screen door, nervously latching and unlatching the catch. Her husband, Stuart, a large-shouldered man, is seated in one of the chairs with a paper open before him. He pretends to be reading, but furtively he follows his wife's nervous movements.
Stuart? Stuart?
Yes?
I do wish you had notified the governor this afternoon.
I thought I explained to you that the governor is a busy man, and he can't be disturbed every time there's a little outburst in a town.
Stuart, this isn't any little outburst. You ought to understand your own hometown well enough to know that a Negro's assault on a white woman is a pretty serious affair.
We don't even know yet that it was a Negro. Davis' girl was pretty hysterical, and she couldn't get much straight this afternoon.
But you did arrest a Negro.
Yes, simple Len. Some pretty damaging evidence seemed to point to the half-wit, and we thought we'd better lock him up for safekeeping, that's all. No charges have been placed against him. The girl will be cleared tomorrow, and we'll get things straight then.
Tomorrow may be too late.
Why? What do you mean?
No, well, know what I mean, but you won't let it pass your lips. Stuart, why can't we be frank with each other? You're sitting there thinking just like I am. What would happen if a mob gathered?
Stuart goes to the window.
Come here. Look out there at that quiet street. Does that look like a riot scene?
No, it doesn't.
Now listen. Do you hear any sounds of a mob?
Not now, but you can't tell what night will bring. Ugly things move in the dark.
Well, if you just must have a mob, then we can take care of even that. Didn't I tell you that the jail is well protected? And I've been taking every precaution? Deputies and police are guarding the place, and we have enough tear bombs and shotguns to stop any crowd.
You say that to reassure me. Down in your heart, you're doubting with me. You're afraid you did wrong not to notify the governor to have the state militia on hand. Aren't you really?
The only wrong thing I've done is let you talk yourself into believing that there is a possibility of a lynch in this town, when there isn't any. Here. Read this. The comic will be good for your nerves. I wouldn't miss an evening with Desperado Joe. Well, look here at the pickle he's in. They've just caught Joe, who kidnapped Percy's girl. And look at this. It's a wow. The gang's got him, and boy, is he scared.
The gang's got him. Stuart, how can you laugh at this?
Oh, all right. Skip it. Skip it. Gladys, you're losing your sense of humor. After all, it's only funny. And I do believe this mess is on your nerves.
A thin whimper is heard from the other room.
You see, your loud laughing has wakened Junior.
Isn't Annabelle with him?
No, she hasn't come yet, but she'll be here almost any time now. She never disappoints.
Gladys exits. Stuart goes again to the window and looks first to the left and then to the right as if peering up and down the street. He goes to the radio and attempts to dial a station. Disgusted at his failure to clear the static, he turns to the easy chair, snaps on a lamp, and settles to read again. A frantic knock on the screen door breaks the silence. An excited voice calls,
Miss Landers! Miss Landers!
What is it? Who is it, Stuart?
Stuart opens the door. Annabelle, a stout, pleasant-looking brown woman, stumbles into the room.
See, Gladys? You've worked yourself up into a frenzy over nothing. It's only Annabelle.
Why, Annabelle, what's the matter? You knocked on that door hard enough to shake the house and frighten me.
Yes, ma'am, I was scared too. Mr. Landers, please lock that door.
Sure, I'll lock it. But why?
Sir, I thought I'd never get here. I was that scared.
Sit down, Annabelle. Now tell us what happened to you.
Ma'am, it's happened to all us colored folks. Down there beyond the railroad tracks, there's nary a dark face about. They's gone and locked their doors and pushed chairs and tables up against them so that nobody can get to them. Tomorrow, most of them what can find the money's going to get away from here.
Why are they acting like that, Annabelle?
That's kind of what's happened to Poe Daffy Lem.
Nothing has happened to Lem. They had to lock him up until they find out all about that terrible affair that happened this afternoon.
That's just it, Mr. Landers. Them Davises is such strong people. There's enough of them to burn the whole town, and they can burn Poe Lem as easy as that.
What a crazy notion, Annabelle.
It ain't crazy. We colored folks has heard all about it. Some of the men uptown done told their friends and say for them to get off the streets to keep out of trouble because they wouldn't like to have to herb up all the colored folks too. That's why I was so scared. My folks at home tried to keep me, but I knowed y'all would be looking for me, so I stole out and kind of bent over so as nobody could see my face, and I snuck up on here.
And to you, nothing has happened to you.
Yes, sir, but all along on the streets, I seen a little bunch of folks here and a little bunch there, and they was all getting together talking. Then they'd go join up with the other bunch. One time, one of them hollered at me, and I started running and just kept right on till I got here.
All right, Annabelle, now you're safe and sound here. You need not worry anymore. You go fix the baby's bottle and take it to him and try to forget all about Len and fail.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
See, Stuart, what did I tell you?
You can't believe everything Annabelle says. She's excited and imaginable. She hasn't seen half of what she thinks she says.
Annabelle has never been one to lie.
No, she hasn't. But she's frightened and doesn't know what she's saying. The Negroes are very excitable. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if a number of them didn't leave town suddenly, right here in the middle of crop season. It's too bad. I wish we could have kept Lem's arrest from him. That's the one bad thing about these cursed affairs. The good ones suffer with the bad.
And remember, it's not only the Negroes that suffer. Anytime any injustice is done or any disgrace falls, all of us feel it. Our children feel it.
One proud mother, aren't you? Ever since Junior drew his first breath, all I ever heard was our children.
Seriously, Stuart, before he came, I never had any idea how much you bothered about what your children were going to do, even what they were going to think. Now, all the time, I worry about the kind of world Junior will have to live in. That's the reason I didn't like the comic strip you showed me. I hate the thought that he'll be reading about gangs and mobs and enjoy them.
I read them, and you don't seem to find me so bad.
You're a man. You know the difference between right and wrong. You know your ideas are formed. You don't need anything to guide you.
But you mustn't get the jitters about it, Gladys. Or Junior will have to grow up without a mother. And that would never do for either Junior or me.
I know, Stuart. I have been a bit nervous. I'm going to try to keep steady. But I lived in a town once where they lynched a man. I can never forget how the town and the people suffered. It wasn't what they did to that unfortunate man alone. He was out of his misery. It was what they did to every soul in that town. They crucified everything that was worthwhile. Justice and pride and self-respect. For generations to come, the children will be gathering the nails and thorns from the scene of that crucifixion.
Don't misunderstand me, Gladys. I agree with you that a lynching is a horrible thing. And even more than you, I would hate to have one happen here. Besides, I don't want my son to grow up in a lawless town. This place has never been guilty of a lynching, and I would feel terribly responsible at this date to blot our record.
That's the reason I think you better go on out and take a look about the town, even though you don't believe all Annabelle said. Maybe you'd better call that governor to put through, too, just to be safe.
I'll take a look around. I don't believe much in Annabelle's vision, but it can't hurt, and you'll be satisfied.
He takes his hat from the table and kisses Gladys and goes out.
Annabelle? Annabelle, come in here. Come in here, Annabelle. I want you to tell me something.
I ain't finished feeding the baby, ma'am.
You can bring him in here.
Yes, ma'am.
Annabelle goes off stage and returns with the baby wrapped in a light blanket.
Does he seem restless? I heard him whimper earlier this evening.
No, ma'am. He was just hungry, I guess, because he's certainly making his way with this bottle.
Now tell me while you're feeding him. Who told you folks about what the people were going to do to Len?
I don't exactly remember, ma'am.
Now try to remember. If you tell me, I can tell Mr. Landers when he comes back, and he'll stop all that talk.
Now, let me see. I believe Ruby told me, and she had it from Josh's Sarah, and Sarah got it from Josh from the store where he works on Main Street. His boss had lots of men coming and going all evening. He told Josh that the folks was going to give Lem a little necktie party. As others would remember that even if they got the sense, they got to know a white woman, and if they's crazy enough not to, they got to go to the crazy house.
Wonder why they never sent Lem upstate to the asylum.
His ma did want to ask Mr. Landers about sending him a long time ago, but Mr. Joe, what owns the farm, say their crops wasn't no good nohow, and they wasn't paying nothing, and they best keep Lem to help make out, because Lem was strong and he could work.
That's too bad.
Yes, ma'am, it sure is. I don't know what Lem done exactly, but the whole town's gone plumb crazy. And Josh's boss say they're going to burn Lem.
Oh, Annabelle, you mustn't believe all that. Lem will have a fair trial. They'll keep him locked up safe until then.
But they can't.
They can't? What do you mean?
Josh say the man what hold the keys is the Davis girl's cousin, and he mad like all the rest. He come in the store, too, and plan with the men.
That's probably wrong. I don't think that's true.
What ain't, ma'am?
About the keepers being the girl's cousin and planning with the rest?
Yes, ma'am, 'tis, too. I know more about this town than you does, Miss Landis, because my mammy nursed most of these folks. She say one half of them's related, and those what ain't, he's got relatives what is. And I remembers that the Davises and the Miltons is all mixed up their way back. Anyhow, he's gonna let him in tonight. Josh heard him promise.
Annabelle, why did you let Mr. Landers go without telling
I
him
was
that?
that scared, ma'am. I forget some things. Mr. Landis didn't believe me nohow. He just kind of laughed at what I said.
It's so dark now. I'm afraid I'll have trouble finding him, but he ought to know. Oh, I wish he'd come back by there. Annabelle, did you hear anything?
Only you talking, ma'am, and the quiet breathing of this blessed angel.
Annabelle, listen. Listen.
In the silence, a slight roaring is heard. The sounds grow louder, and the jeering of a mob can be heard.
I was so afraid, and now it's happened.
Don't get upset yet, ma'am. You don't know what's happened.
Yes, I do. I felt it coming all the time.
Didn't Mr. Landis go down to the jail? Ain't he the sheriff, and couldn't he take him keys away from Mr. Milton? Maybe that's what he done.
No. I'm afraid he couldn't do anything against a crowd.
He's got my prayers to help him out.
It's more than my prayers he's got. I'm there with him, helping him fight back the mob. I'm fighting to save us all from sorrow, the torture to that crazy beau, the disgrace to our town, and against all the evil they're building for our children and our children's children to bear.
Don't take on so, Miss Landis. You're shaking all over. You best go on in, Miss Landis, and lay down.
Gladys turns back into the room and walks back and forth. Annabelle remains at the door.
Lie down. Lie down. I can't lie down not knowing what's happening.
Hurried footsteps pass. Voices are heard calling, "Lynch him! String him up! They got him!" The sound of general rioting grows louder and nearer. Annabelle latches the screen door and starts to shut the house door.
Oh, crazy lamb. Oh, lamb, please, good Lord, save him.
There's no use closing that door, Annabelle. You can't shut it out, I heard. They've got him, haven't they?
Yes, ma'am, that's what they call him.
And they're passing up Green Street, aren't they?
Yes, ma'am, I think so.
Right down to the town hall to make a mockery of all we ought to be. They can't do this. They mustn't.
And so they's really gonna burn him.
Burn a human being? There must be some way to stop it.
You just have to leave it to the Lord now, Miss Landis. Oh, Jesus, help us.
If only I could make them listen to me. They don't know what they're doing.
They ain't got no ears now, ma'am.
If I could make them forget this afternoon, forget the poor crazy fellow, and look at themselves and their children.
They ain't forget those. They got children with them. I seen some of them passed down by the corner.
The children, too? They can't do that to our children. They're all we have. They're our promise, our future.
Yes, ma'am. My children's all I got, too. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be working all the time till I was ready to drop. Then come a time like tonight, and I get to thinking that my sons has got to grow up in this town, too, and supposing after all my hard work, they ends like that.
Surely your sons will grow up in this town, and so will my son, and probably their sons' sons. I'll tell that mob how I feel. I'll tell them how you feel. I'll show them my baby. He's the town's tomorrow.
Gladys grabs her baby from Annabelle.
Where are you going, ma'am?
Out to tell them.
But you can't do that. You can't take no baby out into that crowd.
My son will show them the way.
I've hid my sons, and you best hide yours until those folks get some sense.
When they hear my plea, when they see my son, they'll understand.
They won't listen. They were some poor lamb. They've come crazy.
Gladys breaks past Annabelle, and baby in arm rushes out. Annabelle stands stunned, looking after her. She watches for a while, and then, as the sounds of the riot grow close, she turns away, closing the house door. She snaps out the large lamp and, leaving light only from the next room, peeks cautiously out the window from the side. A thundering knock is heard on the door. Annabelle crouches in fear.
Miss Landers, anybody home?
Who is you? What you want here? Mr. Landis ain't home.
I ain't looking for the sheriff. We're his men, and he sent us here.
Annabelle opens the door. Wilson, Thomas, and Anderson enter. They are ordinary white men.
What are you doing here?
She's all right. She's the Landers Annabelle.
Evening, Mr. Wilson. I didn't know it was you, and you can't blame me none for not wanting to open that door with me here all by myself.
Where's the missuses? The sheriff sent us here to look out for things.
She got a notion in her head to stop that mob and ran out with the baby.
Ran out with the baby? Where?
Up there where the mob is.
Good God, Tom, the sheriff will raise the devil. We were supposed to guard her in the house.
We'd been here if we hadn't had to stop for you, Wilson.
Got any notion which way she went, Annabelle?
Say something about going up Green Street way.
Say, fellas, you stay here and look out for things. See if I see anything of her. She ain't got no business out in that mob with no baby.
Anderson exits.
Annabelle, give me some water.
Yes, sir.
Annabelle exits.
I think I'll stand out on the porch and see whether I can hear anything from up the street.
Can you?
Nope. Seems to have quieted down. Wonder what's going on.
You know, I'm glad the boss put me on my duty down here. I guess now that they've got the fellow, they'll lynch him, and ain't much on stomach and things like that.
Say, Wilson, the boss sure knew what he was doing when he sent us up here. What fool notion do you think made the missus take a baby out in that crowd? Sure hope Andy finds her. I wouldn't know what to tell the boss.
Say, Tom, what happened down to the jail?
Sheriff fought like a hellcat, but wasn't no use. Them folks were plumb mad.
How'd they get to the jail?
You know half the deputies were the Davis kin, and I heard Milton give him the key.
Milton will sure be in hot water.
Gee, they're quiet. Wonder if the sheriff finally got to them to change their minds. You know how once down there at the jail, I thought he'd won them over. He stood in front of Lem's cell pleading, and some of them was half listening. Then somebody yelled, "S'pose it was your wife."
I know that ended it.
Yeah, of course, most of the staff stood by the sheriff, but I wonder what I'd do if it was my woman folk.
Don't know, Tom. Then the poor rascal was Daffy.
So damn quiet up there,
Annabelle comes back with a glass of water and hands it to Wilson.
Mr. Wilson, has they burned Lem?
I don't know.
But they got him, didn't they?
Yeah,
And they took him up to the square to burn him, didn't they?
I guess so, Annabelle.
Yeah, I know they burned him too, just like they said they do. Oh, Lord, have mercy on his po' daffy soul.
Say, Wilson, here comes the boss.
Annabelle, quit that fuss. The boss has had a pretty bad night, and he don't want to come home to no wailing and moaning.
Annabelle dries her eyes and looks up as Stewart enters.
Well, boys, you didn't save him.
Annabelle goes out of the room sobbing.
Sorry, Sheriff. I know you don't want to say nothing about it now.
Thank you, Thomas and Wilson.
Any other orders, sir?
Nothing right now. The square is guarded. Thomas, you might go down to the jail to see whether Ogden wants you for anything. He's in Milton's place. I'll be down in a little while. We expect the state militia in about half an hour.
Yes, sir.
Will they stay? We don't need them now, do we?
Can't tell. But we'll be on hand to welcome them. Where's Mrs. Landers?
I don't know, sir, but when we got here, she had gone.
Gone. Gone where?
We couldn't exactly find out, sir, but Annabelle says she took the baby and went out in the crowd. Tom and I stayed here, and Anderson went out to look for him.
My God, Wilson, what are you saying? Took the baby and went out to that crowd? Annabelle! Annabelle!
Annabelle enters from the next room.
Yes, sir.
Annabelle, what's this you told Mr. Wilson? Where's Mrs. Landers?
She went out, like I told Mr. Wilson.
Went out with the baby.
Yes, sir, she did, sir.
Where? When? What did she say?
Something about when they seen her and her baby and heard her plea, they'd listen.
Wilson, you stay here till I come back. If Mrs. Landers...
A loud hubbub is heard on the steps, and Anderson, half leading, half carrying the disheveled and hysterical Gladys, enters. They are followed by a small crowd of people who group themselves near the door. Stewart goes quickly and takes Gladys from Anderson's arms.
Where's the baby, Gladys? Gladys, it's Stewart. Tell me, where's the baby?
Sir, his voice is drowned by the concert of voices of the group and the hysterical sobbing of Gladys.
Can't I get an answer from some of you folks? Where is my son?
Dr. Steele appears at the door.
What is it, Gladys? Where's the baby?
Dad, didn't they tell you? The mob lynching your son along with Crazy Lem, they knocked him down, they stamped on him. Oh, Stewart, they won't listen, they can't even see me. They're killing my baby.
Gladys, my God, Gladys, you don't know what you're saying. It's the baby. Where did you take the baby?
He's dead. Did I tell you? And I'm glad. He'll never have to see a lynching.
Gladys, you are hysterical. Try to think. I must understand you.
I said it, he's dead. He'll never.
Gladys crumples in Stewart's arms.
It is the truth, Sheriff. You'd better let me have her, sir. We'll have to put her to bed. I wouldn't try to question her any further. Your man will tell you.
Dr. Steele takes Gladys away from Stewart.
The truth. The truth.
Annabelle, you better go with the doctor to help Mrs. Landers.
Yes, sir.
Andy, was the missus telling the truth, or was she out of her head?
It was the God's gospel.
Stewart stumbles back into the room.
My God. My God, my son is dead. I don't understand.
Sir, there wasn't no use in lying to you. The baby's dead. We picked up the doctor, but when the doctor took one look, he knew. He said we'd better leave the poor thing at his house and he'd come on with us.
How did it happen, Andy?
When we got here, she had gone, so Tom and Wilson stayed to watch the house and I went to look for her. When I got in the thick of the crowd, I looked right and left and couldn't find her nowhere till finally I heard someone say a woman was screaming because they knocked her and the baby down and the baby got trampled in the crowd. I beat my way to her, and sure enough, it was Mrs. Landers. And she was clutching the baby and screaming. Somebody had her, but I explained that you'd sent me to get her. The poor little baby was dead then. Then I got Mrs. Landers down by the doctors, and we come on here. Somebody yelled they killed the Landers baby, and that's how come those folks come to follow us.
I see. Thank you, Andy.
Anything we can do, Mr. Landers?
The militia will be here any minute now. You better get down there and tell them I'll be down as soon as I get things straight here.
Yes, sir.
Anderson and Wilson exit.
May I speak to you, Doctor? How is she?
I've given her a needle, and she is quieted down nicely.
May I see her?
I don't advise it. Talking will only excite her more. She has had the severest type of shock. She should see no one until she has had some sleep.
And
I'm awfully sorry, Sheriff, but he'd been dead when I got him. We left him in my operating room for the night. You can make arrangements in the morning.
My son. It all happened so quickly. So quickly. I can't make myself realize it.
If there's anything I can do.
Thanks, Doctor. We stay with her till I return.
Yes. The colored woman says she is staying too, and she's very helpful. She seems able to quiet her.
Yes. Annabelle's a very good woman. A very, very wise woman. Now I've got to get down to the jail to meet the militia. They're arriving at 9.
Stewart takes his hat and goes slowly towards the door. The screen door closes behind him. Curtain.
Okay, hello everybody. Nice to see you. First of all, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Tim McCarthy. I'm on the faculty at the Kennedy School of Government, and I'm the host of the ART of Human Rights series, which is helping to put on tonight's event. So can I just get another round of applause for the amazing job that the actors and the ensemble did. Great job. Good job. I also just wanted to commend Shira. Where's Shira? Where's Shira? Hi, Shira. Shira Milikowski, the ART, who helped to direct this. And where's Maggie? Maggie's here. Hi, Maggie, again. I'm going to embarrass Maggie for a second. Maggie's my student. We've worked together here at Harvard for 5 consecutive semesters. So I've taught her since she was a sophomore. And this event was in part, kind of part of her vision that came out of a thesis project on these 3 plays that we've just seen here, and the 3 African-American women playwrights who wrote these plays, and a whole lot else. But I'm a proud thesis advisor who has to say that just this morning, Maggie received double highest honors readings on her thesis. So congratulations. I told her I wouldn't do that, so I did. Okay. So tonight we're going to have a conversation here now that we've seen these 3 performances of these really moving lynching plays by these 3 extraordinarily talented women. And on stage with me tonight to have that conversation are 4 folks that I'm really, really pleased to introduce to you. To my immediate right is my friend Lydia Diamond, the acclaimed playwright, former fellow at both the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study and also the W.B. Du Bois Research Institute at the Hutchins Center here at Harvard. Her works include Stick Fly, produced on Broadway in 2011, which I've seen twice and I love, The Gift Horse, Here I Am, Can You Handle It, and adaptations of works by Nikki Giovanni, Toni Morrison, and Harriet Jacobs. And it was actually the adaptation of Harriet Jacobs' work, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, where I first was introduced to Lydia. Maybe we can tell that story later on. Yes, it is. And to Lydia's right is Tremaine Ford, who's a performer and writer, and was in the plays this evening, the readings this evening. He's a writer as well, with an extensive background in fusing theater and racial justice. His credits range from the feature film Hairspray, which I just realized just recently that you were in that, to a staged reading of a play based on the life and death of Emmett Till. He's currently an MFA candidate here at the ART Institute for Advanced Theater Training. Welcome, Tremaine. And to Tremaine's right is Amanda Claybaugh, my colleague and the chair of History and Literature, the concentration where Maggie studies and where I also teach. She is the Samuel Zamari and Doris Zamari Stone Radcliffe Professor of English. She studies race and American history and literature and is particularly interested in ordinary people's experiences with government power. So welcome, Amanda. And then to her right, last but not least, is Derica Purnell, who's a student here at Harvard Law School, is also a community activist and has been at the forefront of much of the great work that students are doing here at Harvard Law School to change this institution and to raise crucial issues of racial justice and civil rights and human rights. She is someone who's a prolific writer. Her writings on her civil rights work have appeared in publications such as the New York Times and the Boston Globe and the Huffington Post. And Derica, welcome. Thank you. Or actually, I should say thank you for welcoming us to the law school. We're in your house here. So the first thing I'd like to do tonight is to ask each of you to just reflect on what you've experienced in this first hour and a half of being here tonight. Just your immediate reactions, how you feel. I always ask people that when we have performances as part of this series to just sort of talk about your reactions in the moment. Lydia?
I am so moved. First of all, it's hard to direct and perform a reading. You would think it's easy because they've got the words, but it's actually that's what makes it even harder, and that the actors were able to access us so beautifully. It was so beautifully read and so beautifully directed, so thank you for that. You guys can clap. I was struck by that. I don't know these plays. It was sort of sickening, actually, and also embarrassing, because I'm sitting back there thinking, I've been invited to sit on this panel and talk about African American theater, and I haven't been taught African American theater. I've been writing theater, and I've been teaching the writing of theater, but it's shameful how little I know about my own history. I actually was under the impression, the reason I became a playwright is that I thought I was inventing, oh look, now I thought I was inventing a voice. I thought that I was the first person. I didn't really, but sort of. I'm going to put white people in a play about race. Won't that be innovative? In 2016, I had a play that was just in New York called Smart People, and I thought, and you know, people said, quite amazing that the protagonist should be a white man, you know, you, a black woman, writing this protagonist. We were sort of taught to think that the history of African-American theater was there was minstrelsy, and then there was the Harlem Renaissance. And all of that stuff in between just kind of didn't exist and didn't happen, and wasn't accessible, particularly when you didn't have Google. Just didn't get taught. So I'm overwhelmed by that, and also that the young people that we saw read had the opportunity to give voice to this powerful work, and that we all had the opportunity. And I'm thinking maybe that your students do know of, I mean, that there are people now who know of these. Is that true? Am I?
Maggie does, and slowly but surely, yeah.
Yeah, and I find that very exciting. Thank you.
Well, I am still in the aftermath of the feelings, the thoughts, the emotions that not only hearing these plays, but participating in the reading has brought up. And I would say as a young artist, there's nothing more rewarding than being able to use what I thought I was doing because it was fun for something that really means something. And for me, that's the most powerful thing here, the fact that I can really see that the arts really is a voice. It's not just something that's fun and, you know, there's entertainment, okay, great, but like everyone listens to music. Everyone, you know, if everyone takes in art, some people go to the movies, some people go to theater, some people listen to music, but it's just such a voice, and I feel blessed in a way that's so much more rewarding than something that was, you know, like a lot of money and a lot of fun or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just, it has so much more depth for me as a human being that I feel more connected to the world. I feel like I have a purpose. I feel like my job as an artist is just as important as a doctor or a lawyer. And my place in society just has that much of an impact. Tim knows that the beginning of this year, I worked on The Shipment over at the ART. And that is a play by Young Jean Lee, which is also deals with racial issues. And Young Jean Lee is not an African-American playwright, but she wrote this play about African-American issues, stereotypes both in theater and in the world. And when I received that play by email, I was so excited because not only did I feel like this play spoke to me, you know, personally, but I felt like, wow, now I'm going back into my next year in school with something that really has a purpose, that really speaks to some of the issues that are going on today. And it just, you know, put the stamp on there that, you know, what I'm doing matters and art really has a voice.
So I would echo what you said. I feel I was struck by the artistry of the performances. I was struck in particular by the decisions, I guess, did you direct, Maggie? Okay, I was struck by, you know, the way that the apron goes from one play to another and the cane goes from one play to another, and the way that the whole thing is knit together through these little gestures. I thought that was really beautiful. And I was, you know, I was obviously moved both by the content of the plays and as a scholar by the fact that, you know, that Maggie, by your note in the program, by your presence here, by the fact that people who are concerned about issues today still find some useful resources in dry things from the archive 100 years ago and are interested in retrieving those things and bringing them back and making them live again, and that people here feel that these texts might speak to the present moment is very moving to me as a scholar. I was also surprised. I expected all of the plays to make the same move, which is I expected them all to say lynching, to appeal to our sympathy. to say lynching is wrong because this is what African Americans suffer under lynching. And that's what the second play does. The first play and the third play, it seems to me, are doing something very unexpected. And I think it might be interesting to talk about what that is, because it seemed to me that the third play is a kind of warning or a prophecy of doom, and the first play, it seems like, is a threat. And so what different kinds of strategies these playwrights were using, rhetorical strategies, was very surprising to me. And so I'm really pleased that you recovered these plays in particular.
I really, really, really like Drake. He's a rapper, also known as Aubrey Graham. Him and Rihanna have this song called I'll Take Care of You. And if you're a Gil Scott-Heron fan, you also know I'll Take Care of You in a much more slower pace, tone, rhythm. And I remember like just only knowing the Drake and Rihanna version and like really, really liking that song, because I told you I like Drake. And then hearing Gil Scott-Heron's, like the original. And I think that it really inspired me to start listening to samples. Like, where are the origins of all these samples, right? So I actually became completely obsessed with samples. We can talk about that another time. I think the beautiful thing about a sample is that we get to hear pieces of history of someone else's art, and it also finds a way, the artist finds a way for it to reflect current times, right? In these plays, I was just really, really mad because the samples that I heard, the white denial that I heard, the fear that I heard, the appeal to religion that I heard in the plays, were like real life samples. And we hear them today, right? We hear politicians, police officers say that, what was the line that really, really took me away? It was, you know, Negroes are excitable. You know, we attribute fear to being something that's intrapersonal. Like, this is like their thing. It's really not that bad. Like, they're just real, real hype. It's sad because these are real life samples that are being replayed in 2016. And when I look at the dates of the plays, 1933, right? This is the music of our time, and we're just replaying the same song, and what's really changing? And it's sad because I'm afraid that my kid is going to hear more music, more killings, more lynchings, and it's going to repeat the same sample from the late 1800s. You know, so that was sort of my immediate reaction, just seeing the same threads, the same narratives transcend time and art, and it's just really, really problematic and definitely moving.
Like a feedback loop in a sense.
Absolutely, yep.
Lydia, I wanted to ask you about the relationship between the contemporary and history in theater, because you've written plays that deal very much in the moment, in the present moment, our moment, which of course will become history at some point. You've also worked so brilliantly with adaptations and with historical texts to bring them to life or back to life or to us in our own world. And I'm wondering how you think about the relationship between the contemporary and history when you see plays like this.
Well, it's so interesting because I spent the first decade or more of my career being adamantly opposed to putting historical plays on stage because I had only seen African Americans on stage in a historical context. And I thought, why don't we ever get to be flawed and funny and contemporary? Why don't we ever get to be hyper-articulate and neurotic on stage the way white people do? Why don't we get to populate rooms that are as diverse as this room or have problems that obviously live under the umbrella of this crazy society we live in that doesn't understand how to acknowledge and deal with racism, but that maybe could be about something else, and that could be a viable something on which to make a play. So I sort of railed, you know, first with like the, you know, vitriol and commitment of youth, and then I thought I was being actually quite reasonable around that. My imperative was to put people on stage who looked like me in contemporary settings and clothes and so forth and so on. And then the Steppenwolf Theater called me and said, will you please look at this play, Harriet Jacobs, and do it for our audience for young adults. And I didn't know it. Again, I feel, I'm sorry, I'm overly revealing how ill-informed I have been over the course of my career. But I read it, and I thought, why do I not know this? And I thought, why is it not a part of the canon of theater? It's Anne Frank. It's just Anne Frank. And so I decided to write it. It's not so much an adaptation as it is an original play that is based on the facts of Harriet Jacobs. Then something interesting happened. So I did that, and I was embarrassed. I was sitting in my living room looking at a picture of my great-grandfather, who was an enslaved man and later became a minister. And I thought, why would I have thought that that wouldn't be the most important thing? Why would I have not thought that making his story accessible so I now write contemporary and historical plays, but and I will stop gassing on because there are 4 of us, but the other piece of it is that I have found along the way in the existence of Harriet Jacobs that it is often hard to cast. That we have this societal comfort zone around the performance of enslavement and the way we engage with it and metabolize it, and then the dynamic of who's seeing theater and how theater is in and of itself so elitist in our country, and so what it means for black actors to stay on stage and perform enslavement to white audiences. It goes on, and it's so complicated and interesting, but I don't know if I answered anything that you asked.
I didn't have anything in mind specifically. That was great. I just wanted you to talk.
I did that.
Yeah, of course you did. So, Tremaine, I know that you have the work that you did with Emmett Till and also with the Shipment when we first met this fall, having those conversations after that show, that you are passionate about the way that theater can speak to politics, particularly politics of race and racial justice. And so if you could talk a little bit about where that comes from and how you think it does that, because there's so often, I find, I teach this course on American protest literature, and I run this series, and I'm constantly trying to push people to use things for political purposes. One of my advisors in graduate school once said to me that if a squirrel shit on a park bench, I'd think it was an act of resistance.
And it would be.
And I said, it depends on where the squirrel shits. And I think that's real. And so, but I often get pushed back, right, and I know you have, not everything needs to be political, or not everything needs to be preachy. It doesn't mean to be in your face, right? And yet, Ralph Ellison said that all novels protest, right, by definition. So how do you square that? How do you, as an artist, as a writer, as an activist, think about theater as politics?
I think because theater is a reflection of life. I mean, there's so many plays that I've read, or plays that I've seen, or movies that I've seen, or TV shows that I've seen, or scenes that I've seen where I've learned something deeper than what I thought I was watching, you know what I mean? And the little kind of nuggets of wisdom are embedded in there because it's a reflection of life. I had a very interesting kind of trajectory of my life, I guess, my young life. I guess young. And I grew up in Chicago in the Cabrini Green projects, which is a very dangerous and notoriously known housing projects in Chicago. And I describe it in that way now because I'm an adult now, and I'm like, I no longer live there, and it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of like some of the ways that the media has described it. But for me, that was my home. Like, I wouldn't say that. I was like, oh, I grew up on that street, in that building, in that house. But being here now and looking back and reflecting on my experience and having a broader scope of America and the world in general, I was really moved in a very personal way to tell my story, to not only tell my story, but tell the story of the people that grew up with me, the people that were in that space with me. I had the experience of being in this bubble where I lived, which was, all black. But I went to elementary school on the north side of Chicago at a school called Hawthorne Scholastic Academy, and it was majority white. So I would go to school and have this other world, racial, this completely different, like opposite, racial world. But not only racially, but, financially, there were so many differences. And being a young person taking that in, there's no way that didn't affect me, So I would say it really came together for me a few years ago when I felt the need to tell some of those stories, and I started writing. I don't, consider myself a playwright. I don't even know what I am. I just love art. But I was inspired to write, and so I started writing. And what ended up coming out was a bunch of stories that just kind of were part of my youth in this space that I grew up. And then kind of stepping back and looking at what I wrote, because I did it in a sort of stream of consciousness type of way. I wasn't really trying to make a structure. I kind of was just like getting stuff out. And then I looked at it and I said, if I share these stories with people that were not from here, what could that do? How could that bridge those two worlds that I experienced when I was young? How could me kind of going in a little bit more in depth in what I experienced here help the people here understand the people there, And, that was my personal experience with connecting my art to, to something like that. But in the larger scope, I feel that's become, since that point, that's really become my goal. That's really become my goal. And again, I'm reiterating, but that's something that's really solidified why I want to do this. Why do I want to be an artist? Why do I want to be a performer? And it's so much more deeper to me than, fame or fortune, which who gets that?
Amanda, I want to ask you a question about how these plays can be read within the context of what we do, which is really sitting at the intersection of disciplines, right? In history and literature, and African-American studies, and so forth. And one of the things that I've always loved about Hist and Lit, which Maggie continues to sort of embody as a long-standing tradition, is that Hist and Lit allows you to write about stuff that nobody has ever heard of, or that is not part of the canon, or things that were heard of once but then have been lost to certain kinds of histories. And I remember when Maggie discovered these plays, or rediscovered them, of course, and these plays were well known at the time, right? That's the thing. There's a whole salon culture and this parlor culture in Washington, D.C., these African-American women playwrights. There were all of these networks and so forth. So there was this very important, not just a moment, but multiple decades of cultural work being done at a particular time, in a particular space, by particular folks, and then that gets lost to history and must then be rediscovered continuously in the archives, which is what we do, right, is try to find those things. And Hist and Lit is one of those places at Harvard where we value students' rediscoveries of things that may not be the mainstream or the canon. And so talk a little bit about, I know you value that as an intellectual and as a scholar and as a teacher, and why that's important, why studying, reading, performing, interacting, engaging with things like these texts and these women is important.
I feel like you've said the best on that. I feel like that's the eloquent answer you've already given.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing I was thinking about when I was watching this is, a kind of constant topic in African American literature is how do we depict the violence without reproducing the violence, right? So that's, the question of, the beginning of the narrative of life of an American slave, where Douglas depicts the whipping of his aunt in a way that is maybe playing into sort of voyeuristic desires of a white readership, and other authors being very leery of that. And so I was thinking about that a lot when I watched these plays, and because it seems to me that the tricky thing about an anti-lynching play is the ways in which lynching is itself a kind of theater, right? That lynching is a spectacular performance of the most visceral kind, and it convenes a group of people and makes them into a kind of community through that ritual, right? It is like the most intense kind of theater. And so it's easy for me to imagine an anti-lynching poem or an anti-lynching novel, but how you do an anti-lynching play without falling into that trap, I was really interested to see. And so I think that these plays, were very careful to keep the violence off stage, right? I was very interested in how the second play, instead of hearing the screams, we heard the songs from the church. I thought was a kind of brilliant displacement. But what I'm not clear on with these plays, and I have a question then about that, is what kind of community do they imagine they're convening, right? I think about that third play that ends with two different white characters saying, can I do anything? Is there anything I can do? And that seems to be the question of these plays. Like, what are we supposed to be doing after we watch this play? And so actually, do you mind, can I feed that question out? Because I feel like there's a historical answer I'd like to hear from Maggie, like the original playwrights, what did they think, what kind of audience were they addressing? But then I'm also wondering the actors, like when I don't want to ask a naive acting question, but like when you get into the role, who do you imagine as your audience, or who do you imagine addressing? So Maggie, you have a microphone.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't think it's on.
Yeah.
No.
How about now?
Yeah.
Great. It feels so like intimate in the middle of this circle. I don't even know if I need this. But regardless, to talk a little bit about the history of the third in particular, I think it's sort of unsatisfying in terms of the community it imagines because, as it notes briefly in the program, this won third place in the Association of Southern Women for the Prevention of Lynchings play contest in 1936. And this organization was founded in 1930 as the first mass organization, all of Southern white women, to fight lynching. And they held this contest, recruited plays from all over, all sorts of playwrights, and ended up choosing two plays, both by white authors, to actually produce and publish, both of which have black characters, but trade in minstrelsy a little bit and aren't really the most favorable representations. And then you get Nails and Thorns in third place, which they laud for its attempts, but then diminish it because they're worried that, it talks about white people maybe a little bit too much and maybe not exactly imagining the type of heroine that we want to recruit to our cause.
Were they mostly black writers who had submitted work, or was she the only one who placed? Do you know?
She was the only one that placed. There was about half and half. Their committee was mostly Southern women from the organization, and then they had two professors from HBCs sitting on the panel.
But the authors, so the authors who placed were two white authors and her?
Yes.
Okay. I interrupted.
No, that's fine. What else would be helpful to share?
I mean, one of the things that I was struck by too, Amanda, picking up on your last point, is that lynching as a performance, as a spectacle, but it's a spectacle of white racial terrorism, right? I mean, and terrorism itself is a spectacle, is a performance. When you think about 9/11, you think about public bombings in town squares and in other public spaces. I mean, these are meant to be dramatic. These are meant to cause a scene. They're meant to do all of these things. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about these plays that it really is juxtaposed against the lynching photographs, right? That these plays, the act of lynching, the spectacle of lynching, the white racial terrorism that happens is off stage. It's inferred, it's talked about, etc. But we never see it. And yet, white people who engaged in this racial terrorism were more than happy to pose for pictures and to look directly into the camera and to smile and hold their children up and as almost a family portrait, often beneath the hanging body or near the scorched body, and then circulating these as postcards. That the postcard of the lynching pictures becomes its own genre. And it's interesting to me that these African-American playwrights are doing something very different in terms of the representation of that violence. It's like not even giving it credit.
Well, and
right? It's, right?
Yeah, well, and part, again, my whole thing about, and that I wasn't shown these plays because I was denied a part of my education. It's because they were really brilliant playwrights, that they knew that recreating the violence of the lynching on stage would be anticlimactic and exactly what you, fetishizing this horrific thing that had happened. But so interesting that then every generation of playwright has to reinvent that. It's shameful.
Right.
May I give the anecdote about Aftermath that you know?
Yes, yes, actually, please.
I think, so the first play, Aftermath, which was written in 1919, was originally published in a magazine, but it was then done in 1928 in the Little Theater Contest in New York City, and done in a Broadway theater before a primarily white audience. And as you've all noted, among all the lynching plays, the lynchings are never staged, not in a single one. But in this 1928 variation, they changed the ending. So when John leaves and he takes the pistols and the revolvers, and that's where it closes, in this version, he came back on stage, like shot and dies on the middle of the floor. And when Mary Burrell learned that this had been changed, she wrote furiously to Du Bois, who had been involved in
she went nuts.
to producing it, and was just railing against him. And so that letter that exists is really a testament to how strongly they believe that this is important.
It's an astonishing letter. Yeah, it's an astonishing letter. Du Bois, and yeah, it's really Derek, I wanted to ask you a question about the law. Because the law, because here we are.
The law.
This courtroom. And one of the things that struck me lynching is an extra legal form of racial terrorism, right? It's meant to subvert the law and to circumvent it, to be its own kind of justice or injustice. You're a law student, and here we are in a courtroom. And one of the things that I was struck by in several of the scenes in the play, several of the lines, is that this idea that we can change the laws, or that we might be able to change the laws. There's almost still like a little glimmer of hope that real justice for folks would arrive, and that they would have some role in that. And yet we know that from the history of lynching and the history of so much else in terms of race and African American history in America, that's not true, right? And so talk to me about how you think about that as a lawyer, as a justice warrior.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, if anyone's hiring after I graduate in a non-legal field, I probably will be looking for a job. So hit me up, holla at your girl after the panel. So I'll share this. Okay, so Michael Brown was murdered about 5 blocks from my house in St. Louis, the summer before I started law school. And I remember organizing, being in the streets day in, day out, and coming across so many people who had come to St. Louis to figure out what to do. I think that a lot of people who weren't in St. Louis at the time of his death really think that the Ferguson uprising was a response to Michael's killing, which is possible, right? It's very, very possible. But I believe what was different about Ferguson and even in Baltimore is the spectacle that was sort of made of his death. So not only was he shot in the middle of the street, his body was there for 4.5 hours, right? So it turned into a public wake. You have people, this is the summertime, there's no school. You have people, I don't know if you've seen Canfield Drive, but there are balconies. It's a pretty outdoor area. People are coming to Canfield. His body's uncovered. Blood is pouring out. So when you talk about something that's theatrical, right, this is actually a performance. So I just want to sit with that, because a lot of these conversations are a result of that specific murder. And with Freddie Gray, there is video, right? We see his body being mishandled, him being on the ground, unable to walk, pulled into a van. There's footage, so the world sort of sees how, they're seeing a spectacle being made of his death. It was very, very theatrical. I think, just to a point that was made earlier, I don't know if these acts weren't recreated on stage because the playwrights weren't trying to highlight white terror. I think it's also very, very reasonable that they were also trying to avoid white guilt. I don't know how far your play will go if you have white people on stage hanging people. I just don't know how long you will be on Broadway, to be honest. And even today, we try to hide those images. We try to put those away and explain away why people are being killed. So I just wanted to say that. So yeah, there's this Ferguson uprising. People are hurt, people are afraid, people are scared, people are trying to figure out what to do. And I'm constantly being tapped on the shoulder, by my family who says things like, well, good thing you're on your way to law school. Good thing you're on your way to law school. And I'm like, for what, right? Actually, really, really for what? Why am I on my way to law school? And so even now, as a 2L, I'm still trying to reconcile why I'm still in law school. I think that the first time I actually lost faith was when George Zimmerman was released. That was the first time I was like, wait, we know what happened. Like, what do you mean, right? Whoa, like, we know what happened. We know what this is about. We've seen it historically. This isn't different. But I was like, you know what? Okay, Michael Dunn was convicted after he murdered Jordan Davis and was convicted of attempted murder. Maybe there's hope. But I have much more faith in the people and in movements than in any lawyer or in any legal system. And I think the last year and a half has really, really showed me that. So when I hear I don't know if you guys know Marilyn Mosby. She's actually on campus tonight. She just gave a talk at 6 o'clock. So when I think about how people have so much faith in black people becoming agents of the law, becoming prosecutors, I remember being in Baltimore and weeping when she decided to press charges against those officers. But what does it also mean for her to prosecute many more people who are probably like Freddie Gray than police officers, right? So it's how much faith can we have in the legal system when people can go out of the legal system and commit these horrendous crimes? And even within it, the violence, the state violence that's being used against black people, brown people, poor people on a regular basis. So I think that movement lawyering is a way that I hope to reconcile that. I believe that lawyers who have the skills, who come from communities, hopefully will go back to those communities and just listen to the people. Because the people in Ferguson, before there were CNN and cameras, they knew their interactions with police officers on a daily basis. They knew the law. They knew what they were being charged with. They didn't need lawyers to tell them. They need lawyers to show up. Right, so that's what I hope to do, just show up.
Let's open it up for some questions or comments. Please introduce yourself.
Hi.
And if you have a question.
Such a big question.
Yeah, good, okay.
Hello, I'm Lauren Whitehead. Thank you so much. All of this was really wonderful. I'm going to try to link together two different things and then get to a question, and I promise I'll be as quick as I possibly can. The first thing is that I was never a Beyonce fan until she did the Formation video, right? Okay, so whatever, I'm being honest, this is a safe space, we've done a lot of work together already. So I was never a Beyonce fan, all right? And then she did the Formation video, and suddenly there were white people who were protesting her, and they were like, I'm never buying a Beyonce album again. And suddenly I, a black woman, was like, oh shit, I might buy this Beyonce album. Right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is I've been thinking a lot about Claudia Rankine's really brilliant article that the condition of black life is one of mourning, wherein she talks about the spectacle of lynching and how Mamie Till, Emmett Till's mother, turned that spectacle on itself by demanding that her son's body be seen, which is to say she used the logic of lynching against people who were doing the lynching, right? It was demanding that you see this. So I think there's a difference between who shows the video, who leaves the body, and who decides to have the body left, which makes my question about theater and the spectacle of lynching being put off stage, and whether or not the Black Lives Matter movement, the sort of 2016 thing, has the same responsibility to use the logic of lynching against itself by attempting to show these things that we would rather put away. So I'm just curious I'm wondering what you guys think about whether or not if we were to do something with these plays in 2016, if we might, should, could, would dare to do what I think maybe Brandon Jacobs Jenkins was doing when he tried to show a lynching on stage just 2 years ago? Like, what is that useful in 2016 to turn that logic against itself and perhaps show something else in light of the fact that maybe white guilt would happen, but also maybe different kinds of audiences would show up like I did for Beyonce.
So I will start with the answer of that question. I like that question. I think there are a couple of things. I think theater, the conversation of theater can't happen without the conversation of audience. And so often in theater, there's this presumed over 50 white elite audience. And so what the performance of Lynching does in the context of that audience is very different than what the performance of Lynching does in front of an all-black audience. And then you start layering on, what am I trying to say, economic viability or what have you. It gets really dicey. I would not put a lynching, a dramatized lynching on stage in front of a regional theater audience, not because I think that I shy away from it, but because I think it's not powerful. Because I do think that what it evokes from the audience is embarrassment and pity and white guilt in a way that doesn't feed the conversation. I chose, when I did Harriet Jacobs, to make the cast an all-black cast, and I'm very emphatic about that in the thing, because I think that if we have to watch the white guys, I bet you're very nice white guys, right? And we have to watch the white guys do the mean things to the black people, and you're sitting next to the white person, and the white person is so aware that they're sitting next to you watching the white guys do the mean things. And in the rehearsal process, you've had to unpack the whole power dynamic of the white actors, and then the white director, and the white actors, and the black actors. And it becomes this whole, the rigmarole of the politics of it, which I think takes away from the story of the institution of slavery, which for me was the sexual, political, economic dynamic of slavery. And so I just don't know that in the context in which I, unfortunately, am always making theater, it can be powerful. I would love for someone to prove me differently, but Brendan's play about public lynching has only white people in it. And I think that was really a very powerful choice.
I would also say that one of the ways that the plays that you saw today are powerful without that violence on stage is, someone said something to me recently that really resonated with me, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And they said, racism isn't a black people issue, it's a human issue. And I was like, it's not just black people that are worried about it, and it's the world. This is our issue. So that made me think and connect racism to all types of other injustices, and they're all injustices. Like, to see only black people fighting for black people, or Japanese fighting for Asian people, or gay people fighting for gay rights is kind of still separating us. But when the world fights for justice in general, that's bringing us together. And I feel one of the ways that theater does that is by allowing us to see how much more similar we are than different as human beings. So for me, one of the challenges when I was working on the development of the Emmett Till play was, and I was portraying Emmett Till, was to bring the joy and the charisma and the life and the love and the youth of that boy so that you can care about him. I feel like the more distance we have to certain issues, the more we can not really deal with them. But if it was someone you knew, it's completely different. It really hits home. And so it's more so to see the light in that person's eyes who got lynched in the scenes before, when they have really human moments that you can relate to, that you think about your nephew when you saw him say that about the food or whatever, and then for you to connect that to the injustices that are kind of opposed upon those people. I feel like that's what's really powerful, more so than the actual violent acts, because there are so many violent acts that happen throughout history, and we learn about them. We hear about it on the news, and it's just like another statistic, another news story, another person was shot, da, 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 da. But the more theater allows it to be something personal, that's when it really does something.
I'm also going to quickly add that the medium of theater is a gestural one, and so I think there's also that it's not a medium that's suited to, if you see any kind of, when they do Henry V, they tend not to have big battle scenes and drive people through with the blood and the gore, because they're more elegant ways of portraying those things in more compelling and creative ways. So there's also that.
It's so interesting because ART just wrapped up a show, 1984, by Orwell, where the last 30 plus minutes of that show is an extended torture scene, where the state comes in and starts ripping fingernails out and teeth, and I mean the rats and the face. I mean it was people walked out, and it's interesting because you're saying like keeping it off stage is more powerful than that, and yet audiences, predominantly white audiences, were responding in really powerful ways about state surveillance and about the security state and all these kinds of things, but not making the kinds of linkages generally to the way in which the state slaughters black bodies now. Like we're not talking about extra legal injustice or racial terrorism now. We're talking about, this has always been the case with state agents of violence. But right now we're seeing this. And to your point, which I think is really interesting, is that I wonder if the social media performances and circulations and stagings of the videos and of the pictures and so forth isn't the movement and the kind of democratic population's attempt to push back on the logics of this violence, to show it over and over and over again, almost as a kind of public assault, right, to pay back. Yeah, here.
First of all, I appreciated the whole piece, and I just found that I found the plays powerful and moving. But this conversation, But this conversation, I found really powerful. What's your name?
Tremaine.
Jermaine.
Yes.
There was a simplicity that you spoke with where you made a connection. You said, art is voice. You said, art is life. And you said, art is story. And you were sharing that as really sharing your journey about how it is you've come to see art, use art to share stories that were really part of your life, but they were not part of the worlds you were in. And I was thinking about the power of what we just saw. And, it's like, whose voice gets to be subversive, disruptive, in a space? I mean, the only reason those stories you were sharing were having that effect is because you were in spaces where those voices were not part of life. They were not part of the life of the people in those worlds. And so I think you've gotten to something really profound, because I think that if we're living in a society, and thinking about your point of audience, if the people in the audience it's normalized that they're living in segregated worlds, and then what they encounter on the stage is the humanity of people that, they have created all kinds of stereotypes of and images and distances. The humanity is disruptive. It's revolutionary. It gets in your craw in a way that when you think about, I loved what you were saying about the lynching as a performance. Those performances are reassuring. They confirm beliefs, a world for all those people who are participating in it, except, of course, for the person being lynched. But there's something about humanity that breaks through all of that. When you see somebody's humanity in a way that you can't deny. So basically you were saying, when you're revealing that humanity and what we wind up doing is caring, how can you lynch somebody you care about? So I just think, back to your point of the power of art to reveal something to us, I think it's absolutely true. And I just want to thank you guys for revealing it in all the different layers. And what this reminds me of, just as a name, a few years ago at Brandeis, they had maybe like a 2 or 3 day conference called Just Performance. And they were examining all the different ways, including the courtroom, the stage, rituals, art. They were examining all the ways in which people enact justice in the world and looking at them, all those different forms as performance. And I think that's what you were doing tonight.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Hello. My name is Dr. Shirley Jackson Whitaker, and I'm coming from Amherst, Massachusetts. And we're in the process of, on April the 29th and 30th, to have a production, and it's called Ashes to Ashes. And it's a homegoing for the unburied. Equal Justice Initiative came out with a report of over close to 4,000 African Americans who were lynched. And I felt they never had a burial. So we're going to have a wake, and we're going to have a funeral. And there's art all the way through it. It's a form of hopefully starting to heal. This country is so divided, and I'm a physician, and one thing I know, in order to heal, you need to know your history. And this history has been buried too long. And that's my job, is to make sure we heal. And we're having this service. We're having a cortege, which is my new word. We'll have a glass hearse, and we have some students to make a phenomenal casket that will be pulled by 2 black Clydesdales. We're having a funeral service, because so many people who were lynched never got the opportunity to be buried properly. They never got the ashes to ashes. So we made a production, and we said basically it's Broadway all the way, but we want them to smile, to know that we haven't forgotten them. That for those who know lynching, you know that so often the families were traumatized, and they're the one that's left behind, and the person who, of course, who would lynch was traumatized. So it's called Ashes to Ashes. It's going to be in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's going to be at a church called St. John's. And St. John is where John Brown spoke. It's named after him. It's where Frederick Douglass spoke. It's a part of the Underground Railroad. We're having taps played for the internment, because when they lynched soldiers, they never got their taps. So we're having a funeral, and you're talking about art in action. We have Guy Davis, the son of Ruby Dee and Asa Davis, composing a piece, music. We have all 4 types of major music that was prominent in the black community being expressed over those 2 days. Music during the height of lynching, Negro spirituals, gospel, blues, jazz, and for those who are from the real South, something called raising hymns, which a lot of Northerners don't know a thing about, but it will be there. And so we're using art to start healing, and the first step is acknowledging what happened, respect those for whom so much happened. And I think and hope that it will start to heal this country. As a physician, you cannot heal a patient if you don't know the history.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. We have time for one more question, comment. Anybody? Yeah, back for you.
Hi.
So I came, Tim is a good friend of mine, and randomly everything lined up, and my 19-month-old, I had a babysitter and everything. And I want to tell you guys, like the last time I think I went to a play was probably 15 years ago in LA. It was a one-man show on Huey P. Newton. And I remember after that, I kind of became obsessed with him and learning. And so I'm ashamed to say, I think that was the last time I went to a play. I hate usually plays. I hate Broadway. Sorry, Tim. But Tim is one of my dearest friends, and he's always telling us. Usually after this, we all meet up for drinks on Thursdays, and he tells us about these amazing things. And so today, when you said your main audience you're catering to is usually 50, Caucasian, and...
Not catering to as
I'm
much as
sorry.
Imposed upon me.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. No, I understand.
All right.
No. So I totally understand. You have to do what you have, you got to make money too. So sitting here, I want to, first of all, say make a commitment. Coming tonight was another play. Like, it's been 15 years since the last time I went. I will probably go study this and look more about this, the history. I will make a commitment to you, and Tim's going to keep me abreast of this, like, to attend more plays. But at the same time, I think there has to be, I'm Pakistani American, I grew up in Southern California, I know a lot of the history, of course, I grew up here, but there has to be sort of like a, and I think you guys are already, of course, doing it. This was like riveting and very visceral for me, but I guess you guys also have to cater to a more, I don't know, I don't want to say younger audience, but I mean, I don't know, get me back here.
No, you're right. There's a theater company in town called Company One, and they're doing kind of amazing work that caters to a truly diverse, that doesn't mean just black and white audience, and generationally diverse. But all over the country, these regional theater companies are panicked because they started this system of what is it called when the people buy the tickets? Subscription series. The ecology of it has been set up in such a way that the audiences are even more not diverse. And we will have a drink and we will talk forever and ever and ever. The problem is professorially. So you have to go to the plays, and then you have to tell the theater company that you went and that you demand that they do plays that have people that look like you in them. And then people like me will be on the other side fighting the battle that way. But it's never the artists. It's the producers and the ecology of the way we do elitism around theater in this country. That's the problem.
Because that's what I'm saying. Like, I always felt like, I don't know, it's too bougie for me.
No.
But some of the things, like you're talking about the lynching, like, or my grandfather in Pakistan and India when they fought for partition through the British. A lot of those things happened there too.
People are writing those plays. Yeah. Every day, American playwrights are writing those plays. The theaters aren't producing them.
Because I would love to bring my mom or my aunt or my cousins or even myself to come. My mother-in-law's at home. Bring her to see that we have the same history.
Right.
And especially with what's happening now, wanting to ban Muslims and all this stuff, you see that it's the same history again. It's the same language, the same, there's so many parallels. And I think there can be a coalescing movement.
Also, I want to say that when we think about theater, often we think about the large theater companies, but there's a history of racially specific African-American theater companies which are actually dying because of another part of the complexity of the ecology of the whole thing. But also know that when you look in the paper to go to a play, it's not just the Huntington and the ART. There are hundreds of theater companies full of vibrant and different aged and colored people making theater all over the city, and it's cheap, and the artists are amazing, and so you also have to know to look for not just the plays that are in the three big regional theaters.
I'm also going to mention theater activism, which I was introduced to that when I was in South Africa. So right now there's a huge student movement going on in South Africa, and what different students have begun to do is create. So there's two versions. There's like actual street plays where they'll just go occupy a space and put on a play, or they'll stage different conversations and go to different places in Johannesburg, and actors would just act out the conversation, and then people would just be drawn in, and then it just becomes like a stage, right? So they don't need like a production company, and like they have a different intent, right? They're trying to like get people to buy into their movement, but the way that they still have rehearsals, they still have actors, they still have auditions, and it's the way that they try to like get a particular message out. So I was really blown away by some of the work that those students were doing there. I'm not sure if
there's
art
a street
activism.
theater movement. There's someone in this room, I'm sure, is gouging their eyes out because we're leaving that out. But there are huge movements of street theater that function that way too. There's just a plethora of stuff. Usually when you're on a panel, you're the person who, is working for the other people.
And I would quickly add that as a part of the training at the ART Institute, we spend a 3-month residency at the Moscow Art Theater. And one thing I learned while being in Moscow is that a lot of young people go to the theater there. So that's like something that they do on a Friday night, on a Saturday night. Young people like go on dates to the theater. So this thing of older white crowds being in the theater, it's more of an American thing. It was something I learned from being in Russia. And I find that, yes, not everyone goes to the theater, but almost everyone has a TV. Almost everyone has a phone or a computer. The content that's on television, that's in movies, usually, not all the time, but for me, has less depth than some plays do. And so that's another one of the goals, I think, is for art to have a little bit more heart and soul instead of being so commercial and about making money. Exactly. But when it comes to theater, it usually has that kind of that oomph, that someone wrote this from their soul. They were like trying to say something. They weren't trying to make $1,000.
Even when we're at our most fabulously successful, we're not making any money. So the only reason any of us are doing it is because we feel like we have a story that's urgent and relevant to tell.
And I feel, sorry, I don't know that, but I also feel like the same thing that made it possible for these 3 places to not be known to us is happening right now.
It happens over and over again.
Tons of places that nobody will know until some brilliant undergrad at an Ivy Institute with tons and tons of resources. I think you did a brilliant job at that. Saying that there are scores and scores of lost texts that are being forgotten about right now by young people who are trying to write them and get them produced. I just think that it's not just because we don't have heart and soul, we don't want young audiences, we can't do it for $10, and it's that
It's also because it's powerful. It's also because it's powerful, and that thing which is powerful is threatening to the status quo. So we thwart it. We don't have reviewers who are people of color, and the reviewer decides the life of the play, and if it gets canonized. All of these things are hugely worth, another panel.
Oh, yeah, no, we can go on all night. Go on all night. So I want to ask each of you to say a final word, something you want to say at the end of the night here that you haven't said or that you want to follow up on, or whatever's in your heart or on your mind. So, Derek, why don't we start with you?
Oh, wow. I was so used to going last, I thought I was going to have more time. Okay, so I know there was a comment made earlier about recognizing the humanity in other people, and I do think that's important. I think it's just on my heart right now to say that, I don't think that's enough. Mm-hmm. My fear is that the moment that we don't have an opportunity just to relate to someone is the moment that we justify or storytell reasons to take away their life. So I don't know if Darren Wilson is ever going to be able to look at Michael Brown in the eye and say, you remind me of my brother. And I remember actually Eugene, a former student of yours, calling me out on Dejaria back then, who's this 13, 12-year-old girl who was slung in a swimsuit in Texas, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, my sister, that could be my sister. And he said, but she couldn't be your sister. And why does that matter? Her being human is enough, right? And that's why there's so much work to dehumanize. And I think we have to fight for the most regular, basic folk at the bottom. Because the more we storytell to make them more than human, we make them superhuman. And I don't think just superhumans deserve to live.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I said I was moved by this performance and by the act of recovery and everything it entails, and then I have to say I'm just more moved. I've sat through a lot of bad talkbacks after plays, and this was amazing. And just seeing this audience constitute itself as a community to talk about this issue was amazing. So thank you, everybody who made this possible.
I'm just so grateful for this moment, for being a part of this. I'm a part of the panel. I was a part of the stage reading, but I'm growing and learning and just as moved as I'm sure some of you sitting out there.
Everything that everyone else said.
When we thought about putting this series together, this ART of Human Rights series together, we were committed to trying to bring members of the community and far outside of it, and lots of communities together, academics, activists, artists, and so forth, to come together and have conversations, real conversations about art and human rights and politics and justice. And part of the reason that we put this together was a selfish one for me, because I occupy a weird space at Harvard and feel like a misfit most of the time. My students at the Kennedy School say that I'm the mayor of the island of misfit toys. And I'm constantly seeking sort of ways to find a herd and ways to find a community and ways to find family, and it's not easy to do. And so one of the things that I hope this series will do, and that I think these plays do and this event does, and is to give us spaces where we can come together and be more beautiful and more brave than we were before we walked in the door. And hopefully that will continue as we walk out of the door. And I think moments like these where we convene and get real and bear witness and share things are really important, and they don't happen enough either in the theater or in academia, and sometimes even in social movement spaces. So I just want to honor that, because that's on my heart tonight. So thank you all. Lydia, Tremaine, Amanda, Derica, Maggie, Shira, the ensemble, our friend in the back who's been amazing with the microphones and all of that, David here at the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute, and just all of you for being here tonight. Thank you. God bless.